temporarily closed while UK and US troops are being pulled out of key Middle East military bases after the US and Iran have exchanged heated threats. Donald Trump tonight said that executions in Iran have stopped. I don't know how he knows that. He said that he would take a very strong action should Tehran execute protesters, while Iran promised revenge if any attacks were to take place. Well, I don't know what he means by execute protesters, because there are thousands and thousands of protesters dead that have been fundamentally executed. Meanwhile, the Danish and Greenlandic foreign ministers have been received at the White House. Speaking at a press conference shortly after, they said that fundamental disagreements remain after frank talks, which is code for strong words were exchanged, but nothing has changed. And in the Middle East, phase 2 of Trump's 20-point ceasefire plan to end the conflict in Gaza has now been launched. So an awful lot of stuff going on around the world, and the one common denominator in them is Donald Trump. Earlier on today, Trump was asked about Denmark and Greenland, and was told that the Premier had said, we'd rather be a part of Europe, not America. This is what he had to say about it.
The Premier of Greenland said today, we prefer to stay with Denmark. Do you see that as the final word? That? The Premier of Greenland.
Well, that's their problem. That's their problem. I disagree with him. I don't know who he is, don't know anything about him, but that's going to be a big problem for him.
Embarrassing. He doesn't even know who he is. Jamil joins me now, Executive Director at the National Security Institute at George Mason University in Washington, D.C. Jamil, it's wonderful to see you, and Happy New Year, I guess. We can still do that.
Happy New Year, yes.
Happy
holidays, all the things.
Happy holidays,
Merry
all
Christmas,
of those things.
All the things, yes.
What's going on in the White House?
Well, I mean, if I knew what was going on in the White House, I'd be a multimillionaire. I don't think anybody, and maybe even the president, on any given day, doesn't know what's going on in the White House, because he's, running and gunning. He's playing it by the minute, by the hour, by the day. What I have heard is that a lot of senior cabinet officials are spending more time, and have over the last year, spending more time around the White House rather than back at their home agencies, State Department, Commerce, whatever it might be, because the way the president operates is he decides he wants to have a meeting, talk about an issue, make some decisions, and so if you're not there, you might miss out on the meeting. And so you want to be there. And so there's a lot of cabinet officials and their senior staff hanging around trying to figure out what's happening next and what the president wants to talk about. And you've seen that in real time. You see the president making decisions constantly on foreign policy, on national security and the like. There is some planning. Obviously, this Venezuela operation took some significant planning. And there are these meetings, as we found out just yesterday. The president had a long briefing on Iran, the current state of play, and is teeing up some decisions. So we know there is a something of a decision-making process, but a lot of it does seem to be the president wants to make a move. He wants people to get in conversations. He wants to take action. He's making decisions, and he's executing. The one other thing, and I'll stop here, Petrie, I did hear from a friend of a friend that there was a CEO who was doing some sort of deal with the administration. He's talking to the president directly about the issue, and the CEO says to the president, well, Mr. President, who on your staff should my team, or who should I work with? And the president said, me. Call me when we want to talk about this, and we'll work it out. So I think a lot of this is very personal, and he's really running the operation sort of, as a CEO would, more than a typical president with the large bureaucracy around him.
Well, I mean, and that's not democracy. That's not how the world runs, right? He's not a king. He's not a dictator. There are people around him. There are guardrails. There is Congress. The idea that he could arbitrarily fire on Iran without at least putting it to people in Congress is frankly terrifying, because if one man just makes that decision, then where are the guardrails? Where are the grown-ups in the room saying, look, if you attack Iran, this and this will happen?
Sure. Well, a few things to say about that. One, as the president of the United States, you're right, he's not a king, he's democratically elected, but there's no requirement that the president have a particular process by which he makes decisions, right? The president is entitled to bring in whomever from his cabinet he wants, whatever staff he wants, consult them, and then make decisions if they're within the ambit of his presidency. Now, you're right that there's this tension in the U.S. Constitution between the authorities of the president, particularly in national security areas where he's commander-in-chief and has the, quote, the executive power, and Congress, which has the power, for example, to declare war, to raise and support armies, to provide its advice and consent, at least the Senate, on treaties. The Senate provides advice and consent on ambassadors. Right? There's a lot of authority the president has where he doesn't have to necessarily ask Congress for permission. He does have to ask them for money and get money from them to take action. But a lot of times that money is appropriated ahead of time. The president can move it around if he wants to.
But in his last administration, he wasn't surrounded by his loyalists, people who are not qualified. Pete Hegseth is not qualified to be the Secretary of Defense. I refuse to change that name just because the boys are playing. So he's not. There's no qualification there. Other people, Kristi Noem, not qualified. All of these people are loyalists. So there isn't a grown-up in the room because they're all just saying yes to him, right?
Yeah. I'm not going to. So look, the president can pick his cabinet members. The Senate has to confirm them. They have confirmed all these nominees. Whether that was the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do, the president, has his cabinet, and whether they're loyalists or there's not an adult in the room. At the end of the day, the president does get to decide who makes decisions for the executive branch. Ultimately, he or she has the authority to act. You're right that it's traditionally been the case that the president has had a variety of advisors around him, and that those advisors may have had different viewpoints, and that this administration may be different in the sense that it is very focused on the person of Donald Trump. We've seen the cabinet meetings that are sort of almost like scenes out of a movie where they're all praising the president and lavishing heaps of praise. Yeah, and so we've all seen that, no doubt. And so we can debate whether that means the adults are in the room or not in the room, right? And I'm sure everybody has a point of view on that. But at the end of the day, that's not a requirement of democracy, right? It's not a requirement of the American system that the president have 8 cabinet officials who he consults with who are quote unquote adults in your view or my view, and he takes their advice and he acts on their advice, right? At the end of the day, the American constitutional system works. The president's elected for 4 years. He has certain authorities that come with that office. He has to work with Congress if he wants to get something done through them with funding or the like. And the part of the problem here is Congress, in many ways, is asleep at the switch. It's not doing its job effectively. Hasn't been, frankly, for a number of years, right? I mean, let's be honest. President Obama and President Biden, both former U.S. senators, both members of the Foreign Relations Committee, repeatedly ran over the Senate and the House on matters of national security and foreign policy. President Obama famously ignored the law when he handed over the 5 Taliban senior officials to get Bo Bergdahl back. President Biden went to war conducted strikes against, President Obama conducted strikes in Libya, right? President Biden withdrew from Afghanistan. I mean, there were a lot of things that both, presidents, former senators did without Congress's assistance. Is President Trump more aggressive? Venezuela, certainly an interesting move. The threats against Greenland, right? These are all things, you're right. There's no doubt this is a very assertive executive. Is it illegal? Is it problematic? A lot of that will be decided, I think, in the ballot box.
Is it illegal to invade a sovereign nation? Yes.
Well, so let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about U.S. domestic law, and then let's talk about foreign relations law and international law.
Well, what I'm talking about, what has got us nervous in this side of the world, because there is another side of the world. I know America thinks that with that exceptionalism that there is no other part of the world, but certainly us here are very concerned about his threats against Greenland. That is a sovereign nation, that is a NATO member, and he's talking about invading it. Is that legal?
Well, it would violate the NATO treaty, right? Because we've agreed, we've sort of entered into a pact to not attack one another, so it would violate the NATO treaty. Is it illegal to threaten it? It's not illegal to threaten it, right?
I'm not saying that. Is it illegal to do it?
Well, it would violate the treaty, so we'd be breaking the treaty, but
that's not what I'm asking.
People get out of treaties all the time.
We know that, but is it illegal to invade a sovereign nation with whom you are not at war, with whom there is absolutely no problem, and with whom has agreements with you to put as many soldiers as you like on that island, but you've chosen not to? Would it be an illegal move for America to snatch Greenland from Denmark?
I think it would have real legal problems, the same way we've raised concerns about Ukraine, right? That the Russians invaded Ukraine, a sovereign nation, and taken that land. Now,
yeah, that's also illegal.
Right. I think the Venezuela operation is a different story. So we can talk about why Venezuela is different than what happened in Greenland or happened in Ukraine. We can talk about that, right? But I think it's a different question. Greenland, I think, is an interesting question because, this isn't the first time a U.S. president has tried to obtain Greenland, right? We tried to obtain Greenland.
It doesn't make it right. And by the way, you haven't answered my question. Would it be an illegal move to take a sovereign nation?
Would it be an illegal move to just simply take over Greenland? I don't think it would. I think it would be really problematic under international law. Sure.
It would be problematic under.
I think it would put us at war with Denmark, right, and potentially war with other nations, right.
Or with NATO. We would put war with NATO. We you know what we do? We just dump all our American debt and see your economy collapse. That's what we do. But
I don't think we need to worry about that, right? I think the odds of the U.S. invading Greenland are very low. And I think the odds of NATO going to war, no matter what the U.S. does with the U.S., are zero.
Zero, I agree.
There's not going to be a war.
No.
Okay. Right. So the real question only is if the U.S. really thinks Greenland is part of it, is core to its national security. And again, 1867 we tried to buy it. In the 1940s we tried to buy it. We offered $100 million, right? So it's not the first time the U.S. has tried to get Greenland.
Yeah, but you tried to buy it in a nice way, and by the way, read the room. If it's turned you down so many times, I think the answer's no. And they've also turned you down this time as well. They've said we're not for sale. As you well know, right? Everything oftentimes has a price, right? People
and so the
don't.
question becomes, maybe not.
People don't have a price.
Maybe not. But a lot of people will do jobs they wouldn't otherwise do for enough pay. Right, that's a thing, right? And so the real question is,
you can't buy and sell a nation state. You can't just say, I want to buy that island and the 56,000 people on it.
Petrie, countries have bought nations. Of all the countries in the world to say that, the UK should know better than that. You guys have bought countries all the time.
Yeah, in the past. In the distant past, Jamil. We're not doing it now. We're not doing it now, are we? We're not going and invading a sovereign nation.
Just to be clear, you have a thing called the Commonwealth, don't you? How did you assert authority over all those countries that are in the Commonwealth? Why does Canada sell the Queen on their money? They're a sovereign nation, right?
Yeah, but that's the point. They are a sovereign nation. Yeah, and they're independent of British rule.
Except that their notional head of state is the British Queen.
Notional. It's not the same thing as taking over a nation, is it? It's not the same thing.
England, the UK, has a tremendous number of territories around the globe. The Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands, Diego Garcia. We can go through a whole list. The U.S. has them too, by the way. We have Guam. We have Puerto Rico that has an association with us, right? The Northern Mariana Islands. A lot of nations continue to have territories that are not part of their actual country that have associated with them.
But they're not doing it now. Jamil, we move on from history, don't we?
Hold on. Today, you have those possessions. Today, you maintain sovereignty of those possessions, and there's a negotiated resolution. The president is saying, we want Greenland to join America in that way, and that's not unprecedented. It's happened in recent times, and it could happen again here. The question becomes: are his tactics ones that Europe likes? Are they tactics that Greenland or Denmark are going to tolerate? Perhaps not. But let's not pretend like this is an unprecedented idea that none of these nations around the globe, including many European nations, don't have overseas possessions. They do, and they've obtained them, not just in distant memory, but in recent times. And so the question now becomes,
1960s was the last time.
That's not that long ago. And you maintain them today.
But they're not the last time we did it. Look, the point is, it doesn't, all this stuff about what people did in the past, we're talking about what could happen now. Donald Trump has said, I just want to own it. I just want it to be mine. We know it's not about security because he could have as many soldiers and air bases and weapons as he wanted there. It's also a NATO state. So if China or Russia even made a move towards that, NATO defends it. That's the whole point. So we know it's not about security. We know that. So it is very clear. He has said, and I watched him say it in the White House, nah, I don't want to rent it. I don't want to do it. I just want to own it. Somehow it feels better. for me to own it. So
I understand, Petrie, how that feels offensive and sounds offensive,
deeply.
and people take offense to that. Okay. That being said, I don't think it's purely just Donald Trump wants to just own it. He just feels like he's got this real penchant for Greenland. I think
well, he
that
has for the minerals.
I think that there are real national security and perhaps economic security reasons that the president wants to have the U.S. maintain sovereignty or maintain control over Greenland in a way that's more than just renting space for soldiers. Right now, you could say he's wrong and he shouldn't want that. You could say it's a bad idea for the United States. It's a bad idea for Greenland. It's a bad idea for Denmark. All those things may even be true. At the end of the day, however, the U.S. president, elected by the American people, again, whether we like it or not, whether you like it or I like it or anybody doesn't like it, the American president elected by the people and not removed by Congress, and frankly, with not really any opposition in Congress. There have been some bills introduced, but nothing's going to move that's going to prohibit him from getting Greenland or trying to get Greenland. It doesn't have majorities in the House and the Senate, probably, and probably not, certainly not two-thirds majorities to override a presidential veto. So Congress isn't and may not be able to do anything about it. So then the question becomes, okay, you've got this behavior by the president. He clearly has a point of view. Is there a deal to be done here, right? Is there some resolution, whether it's more American sovereignty, some sort of shared sovereignty, more authority, more troops? I don't know what the deal space looks like, but what's clear is Donald Trump wants to do something of a deal here. What his result, the deal he wants, he might not get, right? The result that Denmark wants, which is get out of our way and leave it alone, that's obviously not going to be the end state. So the question is, where is there a middle ground that can be negotiated? And if not, then what happens? And you're right. Then if this negotiation doesn't work, then we're at the question of, will the U.S. do something by force? It is hard to imagine a scenario in which the president of the United States, any president, Donald Trump or anybody, invades Greenland and takes it by force. Not zero, by the way. Remember, during World War II, Britain invaded Iceland to keep it away from the hands of the Germans, right? And then the U.S. came in and through an agreement took over in Iceland, and then eventually let it become sovereign on its own after the war. So there is history here, and you're right. We don't need to make too much of the history, but I think what you're seeing here is a president using an aggressive tactic, maybe unwarranted, an aggressive position, maximalist position, and try to see what the deal space looks like. And right now, Greenland and Denmark apparently, as of today, said, we're out. We're not doing a deal. Go pound sand. Well, that's probably not the best negotiating tactic with this president.
They don't want to be sold, right? They don't. They've got. I mean, Donald Trump even said just because a boat landed there 500 years ago doesn't make it theirs. Well, right back at you, America, right? I mean, that's exactly how America was founded, right? So it's just this whole space, which is, you know, Donald Trump. Everything's he's the deal maker in chief. What he's doing is disrupting the globe. He could potentially see the end of NATO, which has kept peace in the world, which plays directly into Russia's hands, which plays directly into 100%. China's hands. You know, it is almost like he doesn't give a damn about the rest of the world as long as he gets the toys he wants to play with. And that's what it sounds like when he starts doing his stroppy, I'll have it whether they like it or not. And that's what it feels like. And it must be embarrassing, no, on the world stage now for America?
Well, look, I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening that are embarrassing, right? Our withdrawal from Afghanistan was embarrassing.
Yeah.
President Trump, at times, no doubt, says things and does things in a way that I think a lot of people will be embarrassed by, right? But the U.S. has embarrassed itself in many ways. We have set a red line in Syria that we didn't abide by. You can be sure Russia saw that before they went into Ukraine, and that made part of their calculus. We didn't do anything when they went to Ukraine the first time and took Crimea. I'm sure that was in their calculus when they decided to do a second time, right? So the U.S. does a lot of things and a lot of different presidents, Republican and Democrat alike. I'm not going to defend Donald Trump and his tone and his approach or his assertions against NATO. I will say he's been very effective at getting NATO members to pay up what they're committed to doing for years.
Completely agree.
Right? Yeah. Okay. He's been very effective, along with the Israelis, of taking out Iran's proxy forces and taking out their nuclear capabilities. Again, we can argue about how much and whether it was long enough or worth it, but it was certainly effective, right? He's gone and got Nicolas Maduro. And again, we can dispute whether it's a good idea, bad idea. Why would you pardon one drug dealer from Honduras and then go arrest another drug dealer in Venezuela?
And by the way, Wikipedia now says that President Trump is the president of Venezuela.
He said he was the acting president, which I think, again, maybe not the right tone, maybe not the right approach. But there was a lot of things that Donald Trump has done that I think, while maybe embarrassing to other nations, that they actually have benefited the United States. Whether other countries like it or not, I think that is a fair statement. I think there are parts of it that have actually benefited other parts of the world as well. I think Europe building up its own defense capacity, I think in the long run will actually benefit Europe relative to the United States and relative to the globe. So again,
probably to defend us from America. Probably to defend us from you guys.
I don't think, look, Petrie, I don't think we're going to war anytime soon with the UK or with the rest of Europe. You know, and we, by the way, we have seen the results of Europe rearming itself in history. Not always a great thing when certain parts of Europe rearm. So we all should be worried and watching out for that. And look, we do know who the real enemies are. Okay, I think Donald Trump is pretty clear on who the real enemies are. It's not Europe. He may talk with frustration and make our European allies frustrated. And I'm a big believer in a strong bond across the Atlantic and, frankly, a strong bond across the Pacific with our allies and friends and partners in Japan and India and Australia and New Zealand and South Korea, right? We need those friends and allies, particularly as we face the real threat, which I think Donald Trump understands, which is Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. Now, he may have different views than you and I do about how important a threat Russia is, or whether we can do a deal with China and you know, trust President Xi. I don't think we can trust either Putin or Xi. President Trump clearly thinks he can trust them more than you and I think. But here we are. He is elected president of the United States. 75 million Americans, knowing what they were getting, by the way, after having seen him in office for 4 years, seen him out of office for 4 years, made a decision to elect him.
Yeah, but there's never been a president as unpopular with Americans at this stage in their presidency as Donald Trump. In fact, the second was Donald Trump in his last presidency. So maybe they didn't know what they were getting. Maybe they're surprised by what they've got.
Yeah, well, we have a congressional election coming up in November of this year. We'll see what happens. And then let's say for the sake of argument, Democrats win significant majorities in the House and the Senate. We'll see if they're able to effectively counter the president and push back on some of these things and see if they're able to do that. One, they've got to win those elections. And frankly, they're not polling great either.
No,
right?
I know.
And so we'll see how this all plays out.
Listen, I wish America nothing but the best, but leave Europe and European countries alone, please. Thank you very much indeed, Jamil Jaffer, there, Executive Director at the National Security Institute at George Mason University in Washington, D.C. We're very late to a break. Back in a sec.